You know, most of us think we know the story of creation from the book of Genesis, right? The 7 days, the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, it's all pretty familiar stuff. But what if I told you that story is really only half the picture? What if, hidden right there in plain sight, the Bible is actually having a conversation about creation, not just giving a single monologue?
It's maybe the biggest question we can ask. I mean, every culture, every religion on earth has tried to answer it. And when we open up the Bible, we kind of expect to get one single clear story.
Well, here's the kicker. It doesn't give one answer, it gives two. Right there in the very first chapters of Genesis, there are two totally distinct and in some ways even contradictory stories of how it all began. And this isn't some typo, it's a feature, not a bug.
So let's get to know these two different versions. The easiest way to think about them is like this: God the architect versus God the artist. And these aren't just slightly different versions of the same tale. They have a fundamentally different style, a different focus, and they paint a very different picture of God. Okay, so in Genesis 1, we get the architect. This story is super structured, almost like reading a cosmic blueprint. Creation happens with these grand commands, let there be light, and humanity shows up last, kind of like the final crowning achievement. But then you flip the page to Genesis 2, and the whole vibe just shifts. Suddenly we meet the artist. This is a story, not a list. It's way more personal, it's hands-on, and get this: the order is totally different. The man is created first in a world that's still pretty much a blank canvas. The architect's work is just so methodical. Day 1, light. Day 2, sky. Day 3, land. Everything is separated, ordered, put in its exact right place. It's this vision of a perfectly structured universe, built piece by piece. It's majestic, it's powerful, it's very neat.
And then, bam, we get this totally different image. In the second story, God isn't just speaking things into existence from on high. No, here God is like a potter, literally with hands in the dirt, molding a human being out of dust. And this is before the garden is even planted. It's so intimate, so physical, so artistic.
So you see, these two stories are way more than just different writing styles. They're presenting us with different theological portraits of the Creator. It's less like a single photograph and more like walking through a gallery of paintings, where each one shows you a different side of the same person.
First up, we see God as the evaluator. You know how in that first story, after each day of creation, God steps back and says, "It is good"? Well, that's not a declaration of some kind of static, finished perfection. It's not like, "Okay, done, it's perfect, never touching it again." It's more of a statement about purpose and potential. It means the world is built for flourishing, and this process of evaluation is part of the creative act itself.
Then there's this other really powerful image, God as the victor. Genesis 1 kicks off with a formless void and a watery deep. Now, in the ancient world, water was often this huge symbol for chaos. So in this reading, creation isn't about making something from nothing. It's about taming the wild forces of chaos and bringing order and purpose out of this threatening, untamed reality.
And finally, we get the image of God as king. The language in Genesis 1 is just filled with royal imagery, right? Establishing order, giving commands, granting dominion. This whole metaphor helps explain God's sovereignty over this well-ordered kingdom, the cosmos. But this idea of kingship, it has massive implications for where we fit into the picture. And that brings us to one of the most famous and maybe one of the most misunderstood phrases in the whole text: that command for humanity to have dominion. Honestly, this one phrase has been used to justify a lot of destructive behavior over the centuries.
There it is: have dominion and subdue it. For a long, long time, this has been interpreted as a blank check for humanity to control, dominate, and exploit the natural world for whatever we want. It just sounds like a declaration of absolute power, doesn't it? But what if that's a complete misreading? What if the original context points to something much more complex and way more responsible? This is where having both of those creation stories is absolutely essential. Okay, let's break this down. The traditional view sees dominion as absolute power, human domination. But a more relational view, one that's really backed up by the text as a whole, suggests it's more about power sharing and responsibility. It's not about exploitation, it's about a partnership with the Creator. I mean, think about that second creation story. Humanity is placed in the garden to serve and to protect it. That sounds a lot more like stewardship than tyranny, right? So in this light, humanity's job isn't to be some king sitting on a throne ruling over nature. It's to be a creative partner, a gardener, someone who participates in the ongoing work of helping creation flourish and become everything it was meant to be.
And this all leads us to the final, and maybe the most profound idea of all. These ancient stories aren't just about something that happened a long time ago. They're about an ongoing present and a wide-open future.
So, let's just quickly recap what we've found here. The Bible isn't giving us one story. It's inviting us into a conversation. It paints these multiple, complex pictures of God. It redefines that tricky word dominion as a call to be responsible partners. And maybe the biggest takeaway of all, it presents creation not as a finished product, but as a dynamic, ongoing project, one that we're invited to be a part of.
At the end of the day, arguing about whether Genesis is scientifically accurate completely misses the point. These accounts were never, ever meant to be a science textbook. It's like being mad at a beautiful poem because it's not a good car repair manual. No, these are profound theological reflections on the nature of God, the world, and our place in it.
And that leaves us with one last, really crucial question. If creation isn't some finished masterpiece hanging in a museum, but an ongoing project, a work in progress, then what part will you play in shaping it? What does it mean for us, right here and now, to serve and protect this world we've been given?